And voila, we're good. So the thank you for your support card is going to be a part of every backer's reward box, right? And if you look at the back, that's what the back of the card is. Original backer, OG, you guys right there. And you're not going to see it as well here, but this is linen cardstock, or the linen finish with just a nice little gloss top. And these cards are really durable. Like, oh my goodness. These almost feel plastic. Like, you can't obviously convey that in a video, but these feel damn near like plastic. And that's awesome. This came out way better than I could have hoped. Here's an example of the faction emblems. Here's just a couple more. And I mean, just look how easily they just move. This is outstanding. All right. Let's move on, okay? Let's get the rest of this unboxing because I'm super stoked. Actually, I'm not even sure which boxes are which. We're gonna find out. So again, trying to not damage the tuck boxes because they are gorgeous. These boxes are intended to hold your cards. And honestly, since the main game is supposed to be played with 40 cards, keeping them in this kind of small tuck box might be useful anyway. We'll see. All right, what do we got here? All right, we'll set that aside. Just phenomenal. Okay, this is the Player 2 deck. Okay. We're going to put this one over here for a second. We're going to explain that in a second. I don't know if both of these are the Player 2 deck. See, I mean, when I say we're doing an unboxing, we're doing an unboxing together. We're experiencing this thing together. I scratched the box, but that's the risk you run into. Okay, so now this is the regular deck, right? So with the blue background. So this is actually the first 54. And we'll go through these in a second. Just want to make sure that I got all of my cards. There we go. This is oh my god. All right, so this is the second pack of the regular, the standard, what everybody is going to get as a backer. So this would be the second Player 2. Just very carefully. Open that. So these boxes, I imagine, are going to be quite durable. Like, you're going to actually be able to use these. That was the intent. I just wasn't sure how strong the quality would be, and it was just hopeful. But yeah, this is going to be the second half of the Player 2 cards. We'll set those over here. Okay, blade gone. All right. So when you get your deck of cards, right? When we have this fully funded on Kickstarter, you're not going to have 2 packs of 54. You're going to have 1 pack of 108 plus your booster pack with the tokens, the 18 tokens. Okay, so you're going to have 126 cards. Now that means when you pull it out, it's going to be about that yay thick. There we go. So you can kind of see, for reference, that's about how many cards you're going to get right there. And as you can see, they were boxed a little differently, so they're going to sit a little differently. But I mean, the card quality came out perfect. So let's go through a couple of these. Michael. Oh, well, there we go. There you can see the whole, his value, or her values, I apologize. And you see the whole full card art. I mean, this is gorgeous. And it feels good. I mean, ugh. Gabriel. Oh, Raphael. There's a little bit of glare, but that's how you can tell they're really glossy. I mean, these feel fantastic. We're going to shuffle them in a second. The Malak, the Tsar. Now, I do want to point out, these are different cards. Different art, I should say. They look very similar, but once you start reading the lore a little bit, you'll realize that the Malak has one set of wings, and the Tsar has 2 sets of wings, and then the Seraph have 3 sets of wings. It's hard to tell on the cards because I had to be able to fit them on the card, but they are definitely different. We won't go through all the cards, but I do just kind of wanted to, Ashera. We got to show off Ashera. We got to show off Lilith. And we absolutely got to show off Lucifer. Look at that. I'm blown away. And you got that linen texture, that linen finish, so you got that nice little feel to your card. And it actually has a little bit of, substance to it. You're not just, yes, the colors are cool, the artwork is cool, but it pops just that little bit more. I'm blown away. Now, let's go ahead and do a shuffle, right? Well, I guess I'm going to shuffle them anyway, so it doesn't matter what order they're in. So, first, we'll go ahead and shuffle them all together. Oh my goodness. Did you hear that? How smooth that was? Of course, shuffling 108 cards together is kind of difficult, but they slide together like butter. So we'll just do a smaller amount this time. Oh, look at that. Look how smoothly they just seamlessly came together. Now, because these are a card stock, they're harder to bridge. But look at that. Look at that. No deformation. Just gorgeous. Obviously, they're not going to be able to shuffle like this until you sleeve them, or if you choose to sleeve them. The cards are meant to be played as is. That's why we went out of our way to get the really good card stock. So, and this happens to be a token. Let's move some of these tokens out. And, the Tyrant Queen. Can't forget the Tyrant Queen. She's the big bad of our series right now, just in case you aren't familiar. I like showcasing her because I think her art and her story is fantastic, and it kind of embodies the whole premise of Esoterra as a whole. So, let's see. Guess there aren't any more tokens in here. So, there's 101 playable cards, and then there will be 7 tokens, and then another 18 tokens, because I wanted to get all of the factions and all of the Esoteric anomalies on cards. That amounted to having, 14 factions, 10 anomalies tokens. And the idea of the tokens, by the way, I'm not just pulling these out because I'm OCD or anything crazy like that. I wanted to kind of do a brief how this game is going to look and play, and especially since we got the mat here and all that. And then we'll go into the rule guide, and we'll go into the lore book, which is an unlock in the Kickstarter. And the idea is once the Kickstarter's live and once it's been successful, we'll probably offer the lore guide and everything else at retail value, which means at the Kickstarter value, you're getting bang for your buck. That's the whole point. Obviously, individually, all this stuff costs a lot more, right? You buy one of something, it's going to cost more, right? So the Kickstarter is intended to drive all of that cost down so that it isn't, super expensive. So that you, the backer, can get all of this and more for $60, right? That's the whole point. Because, if you've ever gone online and looked at custom game mats, they're like $35 for a single mat. And they're not going to look nearly as nice as this. So, if this mat's $35 and a deck of cards is already $30 to $40, I mean, an individual booster pack is actually very expensive too. You can always go online and verify this. So booster packs are definitely not something that I'm going to offer right off the rip. Outside of the Kickstarter, very expensive. It's meant to make the Kickstarter more fun, more enjoyable. So on that note, the tokens, right? So the specific tokens that are the anomalies are supposed to be so that when you roll your dice, you can just go ahead and set it on the board somewhere, on the table somewhere, so you can have access. So let's say, for the sake of argument, I didn't order dice on this one. I just realized that because I have so many playing dice, I just didn't occur to me. But the dice are going to be plastic and they're going to be black with white pips. As you can tell, I like the black on white theme, and I think it makes the emblems pop. I think it makes the cards pop. I think it just brings Esoterra to life a little bit better. So I do apologize. In your box, you will have a set of just regular playing dice. I believe they're the 16 millimeter size. So for the sake of argument, let's say we're playing a match of Esoterra, and we roll our dice. The first round is always 2 Esoteric Anomalies. So let's just go and pick the ones off the top: Growth and Cascade. So what does that mean? Well, it's a good thing we have our handy dandy rule guide. Oh, and look at that, the saddle stitching. I mean, it actually has the little cloth on there. All right, so we'll scroll through it. So there's an introduction to Esoterra, basics and rules, and then kind of like the match overview, kind of what goes into a match, how to start a match, and then your different formats and archetypes. I've actually since updated the guide to be 24 pages, and it integrates more imagery, some more visual interaction of, this is what they mean by turning it horizontal, or this is what the game is going to look like. That was one of the feedbacks I got, unfortunately, after I had already ordered this. So we're going to do the speed format, and I'll show it to you. Speed format right there. So, this format allows for a faster version of the primary match format and forgoes the need of a tiebreaker round. Each player will roll for 1 Esoteric's effect in the first 2 rounds, and in the third round, each player will roll for 2 using the 2 dice method and referring to the chart. So, the first match in the first round is going to be a random top 5. So, you have your deck of 40 cards. Obviously, I don't know. I just grabbed 40. We'll say this is 40. And because this map has your deck and your cards set up, you don't actually have to put your deck there or your cards here. It's just kind of an idea of how a player should, organize themselves, right? And it's also one of the reasons why there has to be a card back, because if we were to flip the cards, right, you play your card and you flip it over to show that it was captured, you would have to sleeve your cards, and there was no intelligent way to offer sleeves in an affordable way for a Kickstarter. So we've foregone that. Now in the future, with enough community input, or we should do it this way, and you guys are comfortable getting your own sleeves, or if I ever find a way to get custom sleeves, we'll do that. All right. So with that being said, random top 5. You just take your first 5 cards off the top of the deck. So we'll go ahead and do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. It's going to be high-low, which means that the higher number trumps the lower numbers, and that there's going to be 2 Esoteric Anomalies, which we got right here. Now, again, this is an unboxing video, so I'm getting ahead of myself, and I'm getting really excited. So, we'll go into, I guess, the anatomy of how the game works. All right, we'll just turn this into an unboxing / introduction to the game video, right? Why not? So the anatomy of a card, right? There's two major parts. This part right here, which is the archetype, and the top part, which is the card values. The card values are essentially the value of the top, the right, your left, my left, your right, and then the bottom of the card. And those values is how you determine the strength of your card on those particular sides and whether or not you're going to be able to capture another player card. The other thing is that each player will have to choose an orientation, right side up or sideways, right? Regular, flipped, vertical, horizontal, up, side, whatever you want to call it, that's what it is, right? And of course, we have the name on there and the artwork. But essentially, when you play a card, and we'll just see what this is. Oh, the Saria. So if you see the 5 on the top, 3s on the left and the right, and 7 on the bottom, the way this would work, let's say we played them together like that. This is confusing when it's mirrored like this. But let's say this card's already on there, and you're going to play this card to its side. Well, the 7 trumps the 3, so you'd be able to flip it to your orientation. So if you're vertical, and this was already played horizontal, you'd play your Shahadavar, and this would now turn vertical. Consequently, if your orientation is vertical and you played it, the Saria would turn then horizontal. Now, don't let the orientation fool you or confuse you. This would still be considered the front or the top. So this 3 is 3 whether it's like this or like this. It's a little confusing in that sense, but it's the only way to make this card game playable on an actual board. So as far as learning curve goes, that would be, I would imagine, number 1. The game itself is separated into matches, and those matches are broken down into rounds, and those rounds have 3 parts, whether they're random or constructed, high or low, and how many esoterics and anomalies they have, right? And constructed means what you would think. You take your deck of 40 cards, and after you roll for the esoterics and anomalies, you would build a hand of 5 cards based on that, those parameters, whatever they might be. And also taking into account whether it's high or low. Now, if it's random, you don't have that luxury, right? You just pick the top 5 and you hope for the best. So deck construction is very, very important in this game, and that's why we limit it to 40 cards. You have 101 to choose from, but you only get to put 50 or 40 in there, which means you want to make sure that you have a balance of archetype, of power of your cards, and other things along that line. So because there are other esoteric anomalies, and we'll get into those in a second. The other thing when building a deck is you can only have 1 of each card. Now there is a format which is called Archetype, which is not in this rule book. Nope, it is. Haha, Archetype format, right there next to the primary match format, where you can have doubles, but you can only play your one, or you can only put cards of 1 archetype. And as we saw, so like this archetype is A for armament, and this archetype is M for mortal. Right? So that's what we mean by archetypes. All right. So we're just going to do the first round of a speed format, and that's the 2 we got there. We'll go ahead and shuffle this deck and pretend that there's a player 2 here. That isn't me. They get to draw their 5 cards. They'll put their deck here. And all right, so growth and cascade, that's the thing, right? So we open up our handy dandy guide and we look at growth. Now there's the table, which tells you what you roll is the esoterics anomalies that you get, and then a brief description, and then there's the description guide, which goes into further detail. So here it says cascade, flipped cards can cause other cards to flip. So just imagine if there's, you put a card in the corner and there's a bunch of cards already on the field, and your 1 card in the corner causes 1 to flip, it'll flip the other, and however many else it can potentially flip. It gets pretty wild. And then growth, that's a complex one. Let's not do that. That's kind of a complex mechanic for this just to go over how the cards work and how they look and how everything comes together. So we'll do Discord instead, which cards that share archetypes get a -1 to their card values. So remember where we had... Oh, yeah. So remember how we have the values up there, 3, 4, 4, 7? If there are two armament archetypes on the field, then everything would be -1. So it would be 2, 3, 3, and 6. All right? So, without further ado, let's see how well this will go. Player 1 will be vertical, and player 2 will be horizontal. So, what do we got here? So it looks like I've got 2 armament cards, a mortal card, and 2 divine cards. All right. So let's see here. What do I want to do? Fairly balanced hand, nothing too powerful. So we're going to play the Tefar. We're going to play this card. And we're going to play it right here because that is the most strategic place to put a value of 6 on the top, 6 on the side, and 6 on the bottom. So we'll go ahead and put it in there. And as you can see, it fits perfectly in the square. Really glad that worked out that way. And let's see. This deck has 1 armament, so up to a -2 modifier. 2 mortals, which is also going to end up in a -2. And 2 creatures, which will end up in a total of a -1. So let's see how ruthless we can be here. Alright, so this particular deck has a bunch of powerful in the middle values, but not so much on the top and the bottom. So let's see how well that goes. Alright. We're going to go ahead and play Blue Ascended. Whoa. And as you can see, it's, top and bottom are weak, but the middle ones are strong. So we're going to put her in this top corner to protect her. And that's going to be sideways. Yeah? So now I have a 9 to deal with. The only way to beat a 9 is with an A. But the only card that I have that has an A is this one. But obviously, if I do that, the bottom is going to be very weak. However, this card should not be able to get made again unless something terrible happens with the Cascade, which is possible. So I'm not going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to also play this card in the corner, which is the most powerful place to play that card. Let's see. Back to this one. Yeah, looks like that's going to be tricky. So now we're going to have to play a little strategically. This hand happens to be a little bit weaker than this hand, but that's the whole point of random, right? So the best way to play this hand would probably to be put the Dionea, this card, which has similar values to the Tefar but inverted, right there, and we'll put that as horizontal. For orientation's sake, you can face it the same way, but horizontal is horizontal. All right. And now, let's see. 6 is on top. So actually, I can't even take that card out. I could take it out like this using the Anukai. So my 6 beats this 5. So we play it, and it flips vertical. Now, in a Cascade situation, if this 6 was bigger than this 8, it would flip the Imperator as well, but that wasn't the case, right? Plus, it was already in my orientation. Now, we're going to go ahead and... now here we go. This is where the strategy comes into play, right? So I wasn't entirely sure at first if I had a card that could take one or the other, because this is still a 9. But this one does. If you see, the 7 on the bottom is stronger than the 5 in the middle here, or the 6 on the side here. So what we can do is pick. I mean, the 3s are on either side, so it makes it weak regardless. But what we can do is protect this card, or, well, I guess that isn't much of a protection. It's already in our position. It's a matter of where are we going to do the most good with this particular card. So I think personally that throwing it right here and leaving the side of 3 open on this corner is going to be our best bet. So what we're going to end up doing is the 7 beats the 5, so this flips. But this 6 also beats this 5, which is how we flipped it earlier, right? So it flips both cards. And that's how the cascade works. Now I have a board control with 4 cards in my and player 2, and then only 2 in the player 1. So this is how this goes. Player 1 now has a choice to make. And actually, like I said, this is actually a little bit safer, a little bit better oriented. Just that's the way the cookie crumbled. I'm going to go ahead and play Amit, and I'm going to play the 7, and I'm going to play it right here because the 7 will now be facing in this empty spot, but it'll also take over this card. So let's see what happens. It goes vertical. This card flips vertical, and now the 5 goes up towards this 7, which doesn't cause it to flip, right? It just stays that way. It doesn't affect this card because this one doesn't work. That's irrelevant. The cascade only affects cards that it can be affected. But this 6 can beat this 5, so this gets flipped over again, and now I have board control. So let's see what happens here. 2 cards left. And there are 2 things I can do here. The question is, which one is going to have the better effect, I wonder. So now I only have 2 corners to play with, right? And if I play the Jumalik, I can take this corner and... Oh, actually I can't because this is already in my orientation. So actually the only way I can play this card is to play it down here. And if you look, the 9 and the 8 is stronger than the 7 here. So on this card, I'll be playing my 8 on this side versus the 7 on this side, right? So to put it into perspective, we're gonna be clashing like this. And because that happens, I flip this card, which flips this card, which flips this card. And now I have a very dominating board state, even though I had weaker cards. So now player 1 is freaking out. What are they going to do? Well, they only have one choice, to play Geva, which has 7s on either side. Well, 7 is enough to beat the Saria, or the Saria. I might be pronouncing this wrong, even though I'm the creator. And as you'll see, the 7 is going to flip a bunch of cards too, which is going to cause a cascade effect. So we're going to flip that, we're going to flip that, and that's it. So now it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the vertical section, and 1, 2, 3, and technically 4 in the horizontal section. So technically player 1 would have won. And that's just by playing the cards. Sure, I knew what was on either side, but I still played it as strategically as I would have played it on either hand, right? And that's kind of the way a round would go. So round 1 would go to player 1, 1 victory. Now, there are tiebreaker rounds. And what the reason for that is, and the reason why I counted the remaining card here, is because this is very dominant, right? 6 versus 3 is 4, right? 6 is greater than 4. That's pretty obvious. But let's say I didn't manage to, tap 6, and it was 5 on the mat and 4 in the other orientation. Well, that would be a draw because technically this card that hasn't been played would be counting towards that number, and so it would be 5 versus 5. Right? So that is a game of Esoterra, and that is how a match could possibly work out. So we'll go ahead and put these away. And we'll go, well, we kind of did go over the rule guide, but the lore guide, right? So the lore guide is just this little pamphlet, little booklet here. 144 pages, if I'm not mistaken. They're not numbered, so I can't say go to page 23 and you'll see whatever. But what it is, it's a broader introduction to the story of Esoterra, the lore, why the factions exist, what's about them, a little, back history on how we got to where we are today with, the world of Esoterra as a whole. And it also kind of showcases, the different emblems and then the different cards in a bigger view, so you can kind of see more detail. And then like a little description of what, those cards are. Like who is Ammit? Who is Ammit? What is Ammit? Who is Sekhmet? Why are they relevant, right? And there's just, it's kind of neat. It also explains the archetypes, the different, mortal, divine, creature, armament. And it kind of explains why they're different, how that gets decided. I also transcribed a lot of this information onto the gallery website, which at the time of this video is in construction still, so I can't give you a URL. But there will be a URL, and you'll be able to view the card art, the spoiler art, right? And you'll be able to kind of see the synopsis of the rules, or the background of the factions, of the archetypes, and kind of the story of Esoterra itself. The reason why the booklet is neat is because it's something that you can hold in your hand. It's a nice little collector's item, and it's an unlockable stretch goal in the Kickstarter. And if we get high enough, it's free. So it's just part of the backer. So there's that. The other reward item that can be unlocked is the Player 2, which is the same exact cards, the same exact deck. It's just with a different background. So when you play with a Player 2 deck, it's easier to differentiate perhaps visually, but you're still not flipping them over, right? You still got to do vertical versus horizontal, vertical versus horizontal. Geez. But visually, it's more interesting to look at, right? It kind of gives you that interesting appeal on the on how it looks on the mat, right? It's more colorful. But that's an unlockable reward too, so that when you get your one box, you actually get 2 decks so that you can play with your friends, and you can actually play with the same cards, because obviously if you play with the same 101 cards, somebody could be a jerk and take all of the power corner cards or something, that might be a strategy for you, but you might find out that having all of the power corner cards is actually not going to be beneficial, because most of the rounds are not constructed and done so on purpose, right? Because it would be kind of boring to play the same hand of 5, based on, whatever esoteric anomalies are. You're going to end up playing the same, several games as that may be. So yeah, you get, with, a far enough backing, you'll get 2 decks of cards. They'll have a red background. They'll be the same quality. And if we get a certain high enough support, I'd like to put these on plastic, honestly. I find that plastic just lasts a lot longer. I have a personal deck of playing cards that I just bought on a whim. Just put a bunch of my favorite screenshots and art off of the internet on the cards, and got them in plastic in a little metal tin, and 5 or 6 years ago, and they're still great. The edges wear off a little bit, but these cards, they do have great quality, but of course they're paper stock, so you don't want to get them wet. You'll probably want to put them in sleeves so you don't get your hand oils on them after a while. And the paint will probably flake on the edges. That's just naturally going to happen with cards, whether plastic or paper. But I think these are going to last quite a bit. I mean, just holding them, these feel a cut above the rest. These feel like what you would see at a casino. My personal preference just happens to be plastic cards, but that is also very more expensive, and you can't put holographic or foil or gilded edges on them. And I'd really like to get to a point with the unlock of these cards to where you can get foil and gilded edges. And the only way to do that is with paper stock. So yeah, that's kind of that's the unboxing. That's what you are likely to get up to the 4th reward tier, if I'm not mistaken. The 5th reward tier is where you get your first additional archetype, 18 new cards, 15 that are playable, 3 that are the faction emblems, and it's going to be awesome. It's going to be freaking cool. It's going to be freaking sweet. So, this is what you get for tier 4. That would be, I don't have it on me right now, and I don't want to interrupt the video to pull it up, but I believe that's just a couple hundred backers. So you, a few of your friends, share the word. I mean, it's just basically a Friday night game night, right? That's all it takes, is to bring all of this to life. And like I said, I mean, the cards are gorgeous. They really pop out. And I mean, the full card art, you get to see so much detail. And it's in the guidebook too, so you get to see, like, what is Pride other than, oh, they're a Seven Deadly Sin. Well, let's learn more about them, right? And you can, when you get them out of the tuck box initially, they're printed in the order that you will actually see them in the lore guide. So I didn't shuffle this deck, so Michael will be the first card that you see once you get that far. Now, granted, this is like page 20 or something because of story, but then, right, as you're going through the lore guide, you can actually have your cards next to you. You're like, oh, so this is what's about Michael. Oh, neat. Oh, this is what's about Gabriel. That's neat. Turn it over. Raphael. Oh, well, would you look at that? Interesting. And if you notice, I also alternated the card art, or the background art, to kind of mimic that whole player 1, player 2 kind of deal. Not that, one is better than the other, but just to kind of add that flavor to it as well. So, that's Esoterra the Awakening. These are all the cards that you can get with the first 4 reward tiers. This is how the Esoterics Anomaly tokens are intended to be used. And yeah, the factions, they don't have a point in the game per se, but they're neat. It's that, kind of like with Magic the Gathering, how they have their what are they called? They're not leagues, guilds. Their little guild factions and emblems. And I figured that would be a nice little, extra for the player to have. And these are all of the playable ones, and plus there's the thank you. It might seem a little tacky, but I really am grateful if you back this and you support this and you want to play. I mean, this means a lot. It means you trust this, you find it interesting enough to spend money on it. Why shouldn't I thank you? So, this is Esoterra, the Awakening set. That's everything that's in the box. You get your pack to crack. You get your tuck box to open and store your cards in. You get your rule book. You'll get a lore guide at the 2nd tier as an add-on, and at the fourth tier, it gets added outright. And then same thing with the player 2. These get added outright at tier number 3 or 4. So with just a little bit of backing and support, this is all you. So with that, thank you for watching. Thank you for joining me on this unboxing. I had a blast. This is a long time coming. I think it's fantastic. I think everything came out exactly as I wanted it to, and I think you'll be happy. I think you'll be very happy and pleased with your reward and your set. And the box is also big enough to encounter even the highest level rewards. So there's actually a potential 5 additional booster packs that can be unlocked with this, and it fits perfectly in here, right? You got your couple of deck boxes, and 1 booster pack already fits in nicely. And if you see, there's plenty of room. There is plenty of room for all the additional accoutrements plus your 2 playing dice. So, keep an eye out for the Kickstarter. Keep an eye out for other projects coming out near you. And like our Facebook, Esoterra, our Twitter, Esoterra TCG. And our website is going to end up being esoterra.com or esoterratcg.com. So with that being said, thank you for watching and see you soon.